A 5-minute presentation explaining the status of the project and what they have in mind. All right, I think we're good. And so then at about 7 o'clock, we'll open it up for questions, and we'll take questions until towards the end of the meeting at about 8 o'clock. At some point, there are some forms, just some kind of feedback forms that are on the table on the far side. If you could just take a few minutes and fill that out and provide it to Metrolinx again, that will help them to get more information. And so from that point, I'm going to pass the meeting over to Metrolinx. Thank you.
Thanks. Can everyone hear me? Okay. So this meeting is really a dialogue. Just see. Uh-oh, sorry. There we go. It's basically continuing the dialogue we started with the stakeholder meeting we had on April 30th.
Sorry, you have to speak right into the microphone.
Right into the microphone, sorry. On James Street North. So we gave the exact same presentation to the stakeholders we had at the April 30th meeting. Tonight we're going to provide an overview of Metrolinx and its regional transportation plan, the Big Move. Present the preliminary design for James Street North GO Station. This design has been developed with input from a wide range of staff from the City of Hamilton. We're going to ask for your feedback on key elements of the station and plaza design and answer your questions. And as Brian mentioned, afterwards we'd like you to take some time to fill out the feedback form before you go. So I'm just going to start with some background on Metrolinx and GO Transit in case people aren't that familiar with it and haven't attended one of our events before. As part of its plan to deliver long-term sustainable transportation and better transit, the province of Ontario created the Greater Toronto Transportation Authority in 2006. Now it's known as Metrolinx, and so it's meant to play a critical role in planning and developing a seamless integrated transit network, allowing people to use public transit to travel easily from Hamilton all the way to Newmarket and to Oshawa. Metrolinx expanded significantly in 2009 when it merged with GO Transit. Two other operating divisions recently joined Metrolinx, Up Express, which was formerly known as the Airport Rail Link, and the Presto electronic fare card. So the Big Move is Metrolinx's regional transportation plan. It provides a common vision for transportation across the region. The Big Move is in action already. It's got over $16 billion in projects being built today. James Street North is an example of one of these projects. We recently announced the Big Move's next wave of investment. It will continue Metrolinx's transformation of the region by expanding the regional transit network, as well as providing resources for local transit, roads, active transportation, and more. So more information on the Big Move is available at bigmove.ca. And as mandated, Metrolinx presented actually just yesterday recommendations for an investment strategy. So that's available also on our metrolinx.com website. So the Big Move identified 9 big moves with the most transformational impact. And number 7 is a system of interconnected mobility hubs providing an inviting and vibrant atmosphere, linking transportation systems with residential and commercial spaces, as well as shopping, restaurants, daycare, etc. So there's 51 mobility hubs identified in the Big Move. Mobility hubs are basically major transit stations and their surrounding neighbourhoods to about an 800-meter radius. The mobility hub concept is not just about the transit station, but creating this opportunity to live, work, and play in the neighbourhood while also being regionally connected to these other hubs. The Hamilton LIUNA Mobility Hub is centred on the future James Street North GO Station and the proposed A-line. The station is being designed to align with the objectives of our Metrolinx Mobility Hub guidelines, which are focused on seamless mobility, placemaking, and implementation. So while the mobility hub concept includes both the station and beyond to about 800 meters, the scope of this work is only the station design. But Metrolinx is working very closely with city staff to ensure that the station design meets the city's broader planning objectives for the community. Now I'm going to turn it over to Randall Dricey to talk about the actual James Street North project in more detail.
Hi there, I'm Randall Dricey. I'm the project manager for the James Street North Station. I work for Station Infrastructure in the GO Transit division of Metrolinx. So the James Street North Station is going to be a supplement to the current Hamilton GO Center, which is located at 36 Hunter Street East, just up the street here in Hamilton. In May 2011, we completed an environmental assessment which assessed the potential for expansion of service of the Lakeshore West Line, the current GO Lakeshore West Line, to Niagara. The EA was approved and included the James Street North Station. In order to meet the Pan Am Game timeline in 2015 for increased service, GO Transit is in the preliminary design stages of conducting the technical study support two trains, storing two trains at James Street North Station. The approved layover at Lewis Road, which is out in Stony Creek, is still approved. It's the permanent location for a larger layover facility to store trains, and is included in our long-term capital plans. We are currently in the process of developing our stakeholder plan for the addendum of the two storage tracks here at James Street, and will engage this group as necessary as that process progresses. Now we'll get into some details just surrounding the station, and I'm going to come down to that level so I can just point some things out. So the site location is basically spanning between James Street and Bay Street and beyond all the way to Hess Street. It crosses underneath the James Street Bridge, the McNabb Street Bridge, and the Bay Street Bridge. And it's north of Stewart Street and south of Strawn, which is basically the CN corridor as we know it today. The local communities, as you all know, are James Street North, the Beasley community, Strathcona, Central, and I heard Durant was here tonight?
Durant.
Yeah, Durant.
We're up
Okay. And then we have the James Street North historic main and retail corridor, which is key to the station as well. So some of the, there's a few pictures here. So there's LIUNA Station. Previous to that was Waterfront Trail. This is looking north from McNabb Street Bridge. You can see the crest border in there. It's a little hard to see from where you are. And then this is looking east from McNabb Street Bridge to LIUNA Station, just over here. So here we have the existing pedestrian accesses to the station. And you can see there's a number of key, in blue here, all the pedestrian accesses identified in the, sorry, just go back to my notes here. The community pedestrian access route in the preliminary design report for the James Street North Station, which is prepared by our consultant IBI. We identified the stations located within the historic urban core of Hamilton, and as a result, it has a dense network of pedestrian pathways to the station. James Street North will likely serve as the main pedestrian route to the station, which is right here. Another key route is McNabb, as it crosses over the rail corridor, as well as Bay Street, and it connects to the Waterfront Trail. And overall, the analysis of these pedestrian routes is going to be key in designing of the James Street North Station. As well as the pedestrian routes, we have the bicycle routes. Now, there's a number of bicycle routes that we've identified as existing. I don't know if all of you can see it from where you are, but the solid red line on this map basically identifies the existing bike lanes throughout kind of the downtown core and area. The signed bike routes are identified in solid orange. It's a little hard to tell from where you are. And then the green is the Waterfront Trail. And anything in a hash line or a dotted line identifies future cycling routes that are in the city's master plan. So all of these routes now and in the future are tying into how we design the station as well. And then we have local transit. Now, Alana identified before the A-line route. We also have Route 4, which is the Burlington route. And it comes along McNabb Street by the station. It has a 7-minute peak period service. You have Route 2, which is on Barton Street. And it passes just south of the station. It's a walkable distance to the station, also a 7-minute peak. And then again, the future A-line expansion. So those again are tied into the existing, or the design of the station. So now we get into the proposed site plan.
So what about car traffic?
We'll get to that. That's coming up. So this is the proposed site plan at the plaza level. And you'll see what I mean by plaza level as we go through the presentation. So we'll just identify here, here's James Street North, McNabb Street Bridge, the Bay Street Bridge. There's the GO platforms. You can see how the GO platforms start just east of McNabb and span almost to Tiffany Street. They're 300 meters long, over 300 meters long. We have a station building located between McNabb and James Street. And here's a plaza that we've identified that fronts James Street and brings you to the station building near McNabb. An elevator and stair to the platform at McNabb, between McNabb and James. Some bus bays between McNabb and James. Oh, what did I do here? Oh, kiss and ride locations. We've identified one underneath the McNabb Street Bridge that you would access down from James on a parking deck, we'll call it. And then a second kiss and ride off of Tiffany Street there. And there's our multi-level parking, which I just talked about, and some surface parking beyond. And this goes to the proposed vehicle circulation to the station. This vehicle circulation to the station basically identifies how vehicles will access the station from the greater community. Now, key to that is ensuring that the access to the station is in keeping with the North End Traffic Management Study, which was conducted by the city. And emphasis is placed on ensuring traffic comes in off of James Street, rather than external streets like McNabb and Bay Street coming through the North End community. The way the kiss and ride is enabled, it enables traffic to come in off of James Street itself. There's currently a traffic study report being conducted by our consultant, which is going to review all of the design and ensure that it's in keeping with the North End traffic management study. And now we're going to get into the internal circulation of the site itself. So here we have the vehicle circulation within the site. We just spoke about how vehicles would get to the station predominantly on James Street. Basically, they would enter in here off of James Street, come down a ramp underneath the McNabb Street Bridge. As you know, the corridor is about 8 meters deep through this area. Some places it's 10. What we're trying to do is utilize that grade. And so we're bringing the traffic in, down off of James about 4 meters onto a deck so that people can access the kiss and ride, get out of their cars, go to the station, cross the pedestrian bridge here, and make their way to the platforms. And then they can either choose to circulate back to James Street or circulate out to Tiffany Street, Caroline, and Hess Street as well, and make their way back to Bay Street out and beyond. There's a second kiss and ride here as well, and that serves anybody that's coming from this end up Tiffany and Caroline, and Bay Street as well, and Hess, of course. Here we have the bus circulation to the site. Again, we've emphasized that the buses coming in off of James Street. This is where their drop-offs would be. They could proceed out Stewart, they could proceed up McNabb, back to James Street, and north and south. Sorry, I'll go back to the bus just for one note here. We're anticipating that local service would actually stay on James Street, and bus stops would be provided on James rather than entering the station and making a loop. This is the pedestrian, excuse me. This is the pedestrian access, and as you can see, it's white. There's a lot of pedestrian access. So the urban plaza plays a key role to the pedestrian bridge. That we're going to provide direct access off of McNabb to that pedestrian bridge. So basically, once you're on the McNabb Street Bridge, you can cross into the pedestrian bridge and down to the platforms right here. Again, along Stewart, and then you have the parking deck. You can walk this way, and we'll provide a second pedestrian bridge at Bay Street with another access off of Bay Street down to the platforms, with elevators at that location as well. And then once you get down to Stewart, you're at grade and you can access in and around. So this is key to the waterfront trail access as it's off Bay Street. Sorry, yeah, I can put it. So down here is where the parking deck is. It's about half of it is parking deck. The lower level is parking deck as well. There's parking here, here, and here.
How many cars?
I didn't mention how many cars. We're proposing 200 to 300 cars, as well as 4 bus space. So that essentially describes the station itself and the circulation through the station. I'll turn it over to the man.
Will there be fees in parking? Because in the north end, we're having a lot of problem with parking.
No, not at this point. Maybe we can hold all the questions till the end, because some of them might be covered by what I'm going to present. I just want to also back up here. I just want to also point out, you probably are wondering why the platforms are so far away from James Street. It's not ideal, of course, but that's because of some limitations due to the space available because of the bridge at James Street. And so because of our technical requirements, we have to move it that far back. And that ended up meaning that we located the building there, but it also gives us this great opportunity to create this plaza off James Street. So as key stakeholders in the community, you can help really help with the functionality of the station and the plaza. We have to really move quickly on terms of the station layout and design, but there's opportunities within that for your input. So on the drawing, we've identified parts of this station layout. Sorry, I'm just going to move that forward. That are fixed. So the location and the general configuration of the station building are fixed. The retaining wall, which basically on the north side of the site, where Randall, I'll just come down here, pointed out. So this retaining wall, as well as the bus lane and go bus bays, so this right here, and the pedestrian platform, pathway down to the platform level at James. So we definitely want to have something in there. But this plaza, basically here, outlined in yellow, has not been fully designed yet. If you see, there's some faint design behind here, but we covered it up because really it's still very much a work in progress. So we really want to get your ideas. We know that this plaza is going to serve a primary function of providing access to the station by foot, bicycle, or bus. But there's other uses that can also be accommodated there to make this really a vibrant urban space. Ultimately, the design of the plaza will be determined by these proposed uses, because once you get past the basic function of getting access to the station, then we can really play around. So some of the other things that could be potentially included in the plaza include public art and amenities, canopies to provide shelter and frame the plaza, hardscaping, paving, retaining walls, softscaping such as lawns or planting beds, trees, seating, lighting, bicycle parking. So that's basically it for the plaza. I'm just going to go to the next slide to give you a kind of bird's eye view. So just we're looking, here's the LIUNA Station, oops, right there, and so we're looking at northeast. So these are just some images, just examples of the types of elements that can be included, such as public art integrated to walls, or they could be also a standalone piece. You've got seating forming the edge of a planting bed. So it's important to note that these are just examples. It's not a reflection of what we can necessarily provide, but we do want to hear from you and provide you with a plaza that works. We just have to really keep in mind that it's a balance with our very constrained timelines and as well as costs. So for example, with public art, we're willing to work with the city and partner with them to explore opportunities for a local artist or artists to incorporate art into the project that reflects the local community. We've actually already started preliminary discussions with the city on that and continuing that. Likewise, we're also willing to work with the city to install infrastructure to support community programming. So for example, providing electrical outlets in the plaza, things like that. But the programming itself will have to be up to the city. So this is just some more examples. On the left are some light masts that have a sculptural quality, and next to that is an example of lighting integrated right into seating. And above that is a canopy, and on the right is just a paving precedent. So it's just to get your ideas going. So, like I said, we're moving very quickly with setting the location and general configuration of the station building. Essentially, the station building is a bridge structure that runs parallel to the McNabb Street Bridge and connects to the two platforms by stair and elevator towers, and also connects directly to the McNabb Street Bridge. So to date, the direction that we've been giving our consultants is to make the building as transparent as possible, to allow for views in and out of it, particularly at night, and to really help animate the plaza. So this image represents the consultant's current proposal for architectural expression of the building, interpreting the comments that we've provided so far. But there's still a little bit of place where we'd like your input, because again, it's still in preliminary design. Your general thoughts about the character of the station building. Are there opportunities for public art as integrated in the station building? Are there other elements that we need to consider, maybe a community display board, things like that? Now is the time to hear about them. And these are just some examples of some of the ideas we've already given them. So transparency is one direction that we feel is important. So of course you'll probably recognize the McNabb Street Terminal here on the left, which uses transparent glass, masonry, wood, and steel. The image on the top right illustrates the use of translucent building material, allowing light and partial views into the building. And the bottom right just shows an example of station interior. So this is just a sort of final perspective looking northwest along the length of the station, showing the current concept for the entire sort of station area when complete. So, we're standing basically right across the street from LIUNA, and we're hovering above the ground, and we're looking west across. So, like I said, we're in the preliminary design phase for the James Street North Station. Following tonight's meeting, we're going to add this input to what we heard from the comments we've already received from April 30th to help identify a series of station improvements, particularly focused on the plaza. We're going to continue to collaborate with the City of Hamilton and engage community members. In the fall of this year, we're planning to host a follow-up meeting with key stakeholders to show how the feedback that we've received from these meetings is used in the design. Construction is scheduled to begin in early 2014 and will include constructing a new station building, fully accessible north and south rail platforms, a kiss and ride, the parking facility, the bus bays, and pedestrian and bicycle pathways. And like Randall mentioned, there's also plans to use the 2 rail tracks for interim layover purposes. Just so you know, the plaza probably will not be constructed by that time. We will do our best. But the good thing about that is it gives us more time to design it and get your input into it. The station will be operational by summer 2015 in time for the Pan Am and Hairpin Games. And following those games, we'll continue construction on the Bay Street Bridge and provide a connection to Bay Street to provide more convenient customer access to the train platform. So total station completion is scheduled for late 2016, early 2017. So that's it, and thank you very much for coming. This turnout is incredible, and we're really happy to see all of you so interested.
Thank you very much. That was a great presentation. Just as a quick note, I was advised that Councillor Jason Parr wanted to come tonight, but he has to send his regrets. Apparently he's feeling quite sick tonight, so he's sadly wasn't able to leave to try and get here. So anyhow, I'd like us to get to the question period now. There's only one microphone, so it might be a good idea, yeah. So maybe what we can do is if people have questions, ask a question, I'll repeat the question back and then pass the mic over. Okay, and just, I do ask just to please be respectful of everyone's time. Let's try and keep the questions sort of as brief as reasonably can, and try and stay on topic as well, you know, and focus on the Jameson Station. So I'm going to open it up to questions. Sure, you see.
Yeah, I noticed in your Metrolinx page on the web that you put quite a bit of money into bicycle plans for the future, about $5 million. Are there any plans for bike share or that sort of thing in this system?
So the question is that Metrolinx has $5 million allocated for bicycles in the future, and is there any plan to have a bike share at this location?
So we're definitely accommodating space in the plaza for bike parking and bike share if there is a bike share in Hamilton that is established. But other than that, we're not aware of any bike share that is being currently funded.
Would you support it?
I can't speak to that. I mean, certainly bike share is one of a list of many kind of active transportation things that Metrolinx, fundamentally in principle supports. But if you noticed in the investment strategies, looking at other kind of local ways to improve, but I can't speak to that at this point.
I was just going to say that the council recently approved for staff to do an RFP for a bike share that would be funded out of Metrolinx Quick Wins. So I assume Metrolinx would be supportive.
Thank you. That's more fun.
Sure, yes.
I'm wondering about the parking on Stewart Street. What will prevent people from parking? Like right now, there's parking on Stewart Street for free, and I'm wondering, as someone that works in the area on Stewart Street, what's going to prevent people from parking there? Because one of the advantages right now that we have at my workplace is that people can come and park, right?
Or any other residential street.
Or any other, yeah.
So the question is, right now parking is free on Stewart Street. What is there to prevent people from parking on Stewart in order to use the GO train?
So if you go back to how many parking spaces we allocate at the station, in consulting with planning, we look at overall how many parking spaces we'll need. We're planning 200 to 300 spaces. Right now the plans you see here are 345 at this point. We might reduce that back, but the plan says that in the next 5 to 10 years we will only need 200 to 300 spaces simply because it's an urban station. So to your point about parking on Stewart, we don't anticipate that kind of overflow, that people would have to park on Stewart. If you know GO customers, you're going to find the closest spot, and that closest spot is in the parking garage, in the parking deck, and in the parking lot closest to the access points.
Will it be free to go parking?
To our knowledge, yes, at this point.
Currently all of our parking.
Currently all our parking.
Unless it's reserved parking.
Yes. So if anyone didn't hear that, we have reserved parking at our stations. Other than that, everything else is free.
Yes, you have a question from over here?
Yeah, it's just concerning the GO trains and the sound, just the stop and go. Is there going to be any sound barriers continuing past the actual train platform?
So the question is, will there be sound barriers continuing past the platform?
So that's a good question. We're doing a noise study right now that's going to figure out exactly what the impacts are going to be, and that's more pertaining to the layover itself, and that's part of that EA addendum. I can't answer your question right now about sound barriers or anything like that. For the full EA, there was a noise study and those types of impact studies that were done, which was the expansion to Niagara.
Yes.
From what I can see, excuse me, I got a bit of a sore throat. From what I can see, the only structure there really is this pedestrian bridge at McNabb at the moment that's planned. And I don't know if you're familiar with the area around here at all, but there, you know, it's a historic area, and there's a tremendous amount of you know, colorful and historic architecture in the area. And just kind of looking at this structure here, it's how should we put it? It's fairly antiseptic. You know, it's purely, you know, functional, and that's it. Is there any thought been given to integrating that a little bit more with the architecture of the area?
So the question is that the architecture of the neighborhood is very historic, very colorful, and the current building design looks antiseptic. And is there any, is there any effort to make the building more incorporated into the neighborhood?
Thanks. So we got some similar comments at the last meeting, particularly in terms of relating it to LIUNA Station or the Hamilton Go Center. So I think in terms of materials, we're certainly looking at potentially incorporating some of the similar materials that we're finding in the neighborhood. The architectural expression still hasn't been completely defined, but we, you know, it's a new building and we want to have, I think, more of a contemporary look. But I think there's ways we can reference the local heritage, particularly in any kind of public art that we do as well.
Yes, at the back.
Ballpark the number of buses and the time of day that they'd be going through there? And am I right in assuming that they're going down McNabb Street and back out Strand to James?
So the question is about the number of buses and the route that they'll take.
So this kind of speaks to service levels. The bus bays you saw there probably for Go. We haven't established our service levels yet. We're still negotiating with CN for the rail corridor usage. That relates to bus service. I would anticipate that would be on the hourly service or the half-hour service if you're thinking about time frames. And that's not in the current future, that's just overall planning if you compare similar stations like Aldershot. In relation to circulation in and out, circulation is in James, and then either north on McNabb, down Strawn and back onto James, or you can turn south on McNabb and head down McNabb like the city buses do now. That's a good question. I couldn't remember which way they went. I know McNabb runs south now, right? North. It runs north. Okay, there was talk with the city and discussion of turning it two-way.
June 19th.
I think the understanding is that it's actually being currently converted to two-way. Yes?
So currently the GO station at Hunter Street for buses and the GO train, I'm trying to get an understanding, is this replacing some of that? Is this an addition to some of that? And what's the reasoning that we have to have it down here now? Like, is that because of Niagara Falls, or I don't know what?
So the question is whether this station is going to augment or replace the current station at Hunter Street.
So it's going to supplement, it's not going to replace. The reason why it's here is because the route that, in terms of the EA that we found that actually worked from a technical point of view to get to Niagara was through this train line.
Yes?
If you store two trains at the James North Station, do the engines idle overnight, or do they start up particularly early, or what would that situation be?
So the question is, the trains idling at the station, will they be, or the trains that are stored there, will they be idling or will they start early?
So our trains in a layover facility, they plug in overnight and they turn off, and then they start up in the morning for service out in the morning, similar to what's actually at the Go Center of the Street. We have a layover there as well.
Yes?
I think it's a beautiful plan. I love the transparency. One of my issues is safety, and I think that the transparency would definitely help with that. One of my main concerns, and I'm not a traffic specialist, but for James Street North, I avoid James Street North at all costs if I want to get anywhere, because it's already very congested and pedestrian heavy, and I can't imagine more traffic on James Street North. I understand the geographical need for that location, but I'm just wondering if you've done traffic studies in that choice.
So the question relates to the traffic impact on Jamestown.
So we are currently conducting a traffic study on James James North, just to identify what kind of issues those would create, and that relates to signal timing and all those types of issues that you're talking about. We're not quite there yet, so once we have those impacts, obviously we're going to work with city staff to determine what those issues are and how to resolve them.
Yes, Board Member?
Is this going to be an all-day service after the station is built?
The question is, will it be an all-day service after the station is built?
So right now we're building the station to service the increased demand for the Parapan and Pan Am games. The all-day service is identified in the big move. However, that has not been determined when that will come in.
So what would be the initial hours then?
It would be, I think, well, the service planning actually hasn't been done yet because we're not sure when the events are at Ireland Stadium. So again, with the bus, frequency and things like that, we really haven't done the service planning yet. So when Randall said, half hour hourly, that's just based on an assumption on other places, but until we do the actual service planning.
Sorry, when would it start in the morning? When would it end?
Again, we haven't determined.
No idea. Okay.
Just to add to that, a lot of that type of service planning depends on an agreement with CN and when we can operate down their tracks, as they own the rail line that we operate on.
Yes.
You mentioned multi-level parking. So can you describe that? How many levels? What will it look like? Will it have any design quality or just be utilitarian?
So the question is about the multi-level parking, how many levels and how it will look.
So we're going to try and turn this on again just so you can get a better picture. But essentially the multi-level parking, sorry, where'd you go? Ask that question.
I turned it off because it was so bright it blocks the camera from seeing people. So that's why.
So the multi-level parking essentially wasn't an effort to get more parking. What it came out of it wasn't even in our envision, but because the corridor is so deep, it's 8 meters deep, and that's extremely deep. We don't have that anywhere else. We used the deck to break up that distance. So if we were going to put a kiss and ride down at the lower level, you'd have to climb that 8 meters to get over the corridor and then go back down. What the multi-level deck did was allow that kiss and ride to be about 4 meters below and get you back up and over the corridor after you got dropped off. It's quicker, it splits the site in two, it breaks up that huge Speaking to the aesthetics of it, we're working with the design consultant to make it aesthetically pleasing. One of the things also is, one of the benefits of it as well is without the parking deck, what you end up with is basically an 8-meter retaining wall that breaks up the corridor. And so if you were looking looking south from the north end neighborhood there, you would just see a concrete retaining wall that went 8 meters down. What the deck does is breaks that element up and just improves sight lines in general.
I'll just add to that also the retaining wall, if we're going to spend the enormous amount of money to build this giant retaining wall, let's use it and use this space wisely, especially because it's really out of sight from the neighborhood, so it's a great place to tuck in some more parking and give some more activity and oversight to the platforms itself and keep the parking close to the platform. Did you talk about the customer and how it's not coming down as well?
Yes.
Yes. With your hand up.
I noticed that you take GO train down to Niagara Falls, Ontario and back. I've done it a few times. That train going to stop at here when that station completes and open or not? So that's all we need to do to take GO train Niagara Falls or out to go all the way out to about Natchez, go bus Niagara Falls.
So just to clarify, so you're asking if the GO train will go from the station to Niagara?
Yeah. That's what I'm asking.
So I think you're speaking to the Niagara seasonal service that we operate right now, which operates in the summer months. It passes through here, and again, that's part of the service planning. I think you can anticipate that it would stop here on its way to Niagara for those summer months. I believe right now it runs basically from the May long weekend to the Labor Day long weekend, on the weekends, Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday back to Niagara from downtown Toronto, making not all stops, but stops I think at Exhibition, Port Credit, Oakville, and Burlington, and then whether James Street falls into that, we'll see.
Yes?
If the station ends up being used by primarily people who come on the bus or walk or ride their bikes, and there isn't as much demand for parking as anticipated, is there some sense that it could be, some of the parking could be removed? I'm thinking of where it stretches into Barton Tiffany. Can that be scaled back potentially if the demand is not there?
So the question is that if more people walk or take transit or cycle, there's not as much demand for parking. Can some of that space for parking be reclaimed and used for something else?
I would say yes, hopefully. Yeah, like Randall said, we have a Go Rail parking strategy that's looked at parking across the system and where we think we need the most parking and less. And again, 200 to 300 spaces is actually a very low amount for a Go station. And we've said that this one, we don't think we need that much because it's an urban station. So absolutely, that parking on the very west end is sort of, we'll put in what we need and then we'll see what happens.
Yes?
A couple questions. What's going to stop people from using it as free parking and go downtown? Because any of the other GO stations are always away from the business area, so you really have to drive to get there. Whereas here, it's so close into the downtown, people could park for free, then those who come to use the GO train can't find a parking spot and end up in our neighborhood, because that's as close as they can get. So, any plans to address that? And how many elevators will you have, and will you have a pedestrian ramp in addition to stairs? Because I've been in situations where the power's gone, the elevators are down. I had to help a lady carry her baby carriage up the stairs in Burlington because she was stuck. She had no way of getting down from the train.
So the questions are, will there be anything done to ensure that people don't use the free parking at the GO station and then walk to destinations in downtown? And then the other question is, how many elevators will there be? And will there be ramps to access the platforms in addition to stairs and elevators?
I'm going to answer the second question. So we were actually just looking at that the other day. We definitely want to try and provide, we were looking at actually providing a stair and a ramp from Bay Street. Because we won't have a fully functional elevator there in the first phase. And we are looking at a ramp. We felt a ramp was necessary for exactly those reasons. But of course, there still will be elevators within the building.
So I'll speak to the parking question about parking in the lot and then using it to localize businesses. It's kind of a unique station. I can't say we have that everywhere, but what I will say is that GO passengers generally get to the station before business is open, 7, 8 a.m. So any GO passengers that will be using the lot would predominantly be in those hours. Anything after that, it's hard to control, is what I would say.
Yes?
I just want to go back to the parking, only because I just don't quite understand where this parking structure is going. And is it just one structure, or are you allotting some other surface parking? Is the parking ramp going to be down on the track level?
I'm going to bring the image up on the last slide because I think that's probably the easiest to see. Actually, maybe that one works. Can you see from there? So basically, when you look across the street right now, there's the kind of plateau of that empty lot, which is this plaza now. And then we're going to have a ramp coming down off James, going all the way down to about 4 meters below the existing street level. And that's going to be the top level of the parking structure. So what I'm pointing to right here is the kiss and ride, and that's 4 meters below street level. And then 4 meters below that will be another level of parking. But that only that kind of two-tier structure only lasts between McNabb and Bay, is that correct?
Yep.
I'm just getting to the, okay, so here we're coming down that ramp, you're on the 4 meters below. This is McNabb, this is Bay, so it doesn't even reach all the way to Bay, I think. And then there's a ramp down under there, where you can go either underneath this ramp, or then it becomes just surface parking. Approximately 8 meters below, but then the slope of the depth of the site becomes shallower, and so eventually you meet street level again. So it's sort of, you've got a number of different planes coming together.
Basically on that lower level.
Yeah. Yeah, so most of the parking will be invisible from the street level until you get farther down past Bay.
Yes?
One of the strategies at with Metrolinx for funding this big move was paid parking. So assuming that might come at some point in the future, if it doesn't come now, how can the neighborhoods be sure that won't impact them as what's happening with the hospital now, where their parking is a little bit too pricey and people are moving into the neighborhood streets? So have you been looking at options or ways to circumvent that happening on the assumption that there will be paid parking at some point in time?
We haven't at this point, but that's going to be an issue at all of our GO stations if we do implement paid parking. So it's something that we definitely will have to consider in all places and how that's implemented. As I mentioned before, Hamilton, the Hamilton LIUNA Mobility Hub falls under about 800 meters around the station, and our mobility guidelines call for paid parking in the entire mobility hub. So that might be something that the City of Hamilton might implement as well, because we want to we want people to take transit and walk and cycle in these areas, and so it might not just be in isolation. That's another option too.
Yes, Dylan?
In the back there, of that picture, there's a structure which I can't identify. Is that a new bridge at Bay Street?
That's, yeah.
Yes, that's a second structure at Bay Street.
Has that already been designed?
No.
So why is it depicted in that way?
Well, it's been conceptually designed, but it hasn't been detailed design.
So isn't that part of this project? Do you not have a slide that shows us that bridge?
No, we don't. We literally have not put much thought into that yet because we're on such tight timeline to get this open by 2015. We're trying to get the layout and the placement of things set and focus on what needs to be constructed by 2015. So we actually just met with our consultants this week, and we were saying, okay, we need to now start thinking a bit more about the Bay Street Bridge and how that's going to work. So right now they've shown something conceptually, but it hasn't actually been designed very much.
That's going to be the most prominent structure in this whole deal. We would really like to have a look at that before you execute it.
Well, I think when we come back in the fall, it'll probably be much more designed at that point, so that's an opportunity. But it shouldn't be more prominent than the James Street, than the McNabb station, the James Street station, because this is actually the station building, while that is just stair towers and connection.
Will people have an opportunity to provide feedback about that in the forms that you're collecting?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so that's another option as well. Yes?
You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I was in contact with CN, and it's my understanding that CN is replacing that bridge and designing it. And from what I was told through their PR and via their engineering department, that there was nothing special going to be designed, and it was pretty much replacing the bridge as it is. But I guess you're referring to the pedestrian towers or whatever.
So that's a good question. Yes, CN is replacing that bridge. We're working with CN. replacing the road bridge. We'll be building a structure adjacent to it and potentially attaching to the Bay Street Bridge itself, which does not impact their design. We'd be designing it independently. So our structure will be independent of that.
And I ask you why the CN hasn't suggested using the factory that Hamilton Works is on right now, that the CN owns. The contract will be almost up by 2015 and should be moving on. Why aren't they offering that land?
I don't know if that's a question that Metrolinx can answer.
It seems to me that's a way out onto Stewart Street.
Is that something that you can take back?
Sure.
Did you not know the CN owns it?
Sorry, the CN owns.
They never offered.
No.
What is the question?
I think that the question is that CN owns some...
It owns the land that Hamilton Works is on. They have a 20-year contract with AIM, which should be up by 2015.
So apparently
So
CN...
that factory should be moving.
So CN owns the land that Hamilton Works is on, and that
It's at the end of Stewart Street.
it's at the end of Stewart, and that contract is up in 2015.
That's right. That should be incorporated into the plan. Seems to me a lot of this stuff would be easily handled.
I mean, the one thing that that James Street has going for it is that it is proposed the proposed A line, and these mobility hubs we want to be in places where we're meeting other transit lines. Now, I'm not as familiar with this other site, and I have no idea if CN is even open to selling it. Negotiating with CN has been a long-term issue for this site, so I can't speak to that, but that might be one reason why we would want to have our GO station linked to transit systems and main streets within Hamilton.
Thank you. Yes, at the end.
Are there any future plans, I know you're GO, do you have any future plans to coordinate with VIA? We are the only city of our size in this country that has no VIA station.
So the question is whether Metrolinx will coordinate with VIA to have a station that picks up here as well.
Sorry, I don't know.
Is it something that we can ask you to take back?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you. Yes.
Just in terms of this diagram here, and being familiar with the area, this is probably not something you'll be able to answer, but just out of curiosity, right on McNabb, next to where that platform is, there's a horribly unsightly factory building, and I've never been able to figure out what it is, and it's surrounded by high walls and barbed wire and gates. Is that just going to stay there right next to that platform, or is there any...
Well, first of all, you're lucky because I'm from the area. I kind of grew up in this area. Secondly, I've seen it. It's not on our property. There's not much we can do about it. We're aware of it. A lot of cats.
I can just speak generally to the whole idea of, again, the mobility hub is that we want to spur intensification and development at these places so that the investment in transit is supported by that. And so usually major transit investments raise property values, so as the neighborhood picks up, maybe there'll be some incentive to redevelop it.
Yes.
I'm just a little bit concerned about how much you're squeezing into such a short period of time. Can I ask why it's being so time pressed? Doesn't that just create the opportunity for mistakes in this project? It's very expensive.
So the question is why the project is being rushed.
Why is it being rushed and why it's been in the works for how many years now? This is a long time.
Okay, so why is it being rushed after years of planning?
To be honest, that's a higher level question. We know that we have to get this station ready for Pan Am Games. It is a very tight timeline. It usually takes 2 years to actually construct a station. So we're pressed for time. We've been direction to build this station for Pan Am Games because of the events that are being held in Hamilton.
So you're saying procrastination?
I have no idea.
We don't know.
We don't know.
Yes.
I live on McNabb Street, and I was surprised to see the platform coming halfway into the gully. But I will say, I think this looks really nice, what I'm seeing, and pretty impressive. But my question is, why LIUNA was not used? I had assumed when they talked train station in the north end that it was going to be LIUNA. I'm assuming that it's because of ownership. So could you maybe just explain that?
So the question is, why wasn't LIUNA used for the station?
And ownership is directly that, obviously. We're here today. LIUNA has been redeveloped into, obviously, a very successful event center, and property is not available. So we are now on the other side of James Street.
Yes, go to that.
I can fully appreciate the timelines, and I get that. So will things... I'm just envisioning people coming for the Pan Am Games, coming for a soccer event, getting off into a construction zone, and that being their first impression of Hamilton, which Hamilton's got a reputation for certain things as it is. That's not going to help it necessarily for someone coming here. So I get that the Bay Street Bridge will be phased in later on. Will things be done in phases so people aren't walking through construction zones when they come for those events?
That's precisely what the anticipated plan is. We would do things in phases and pick elements of this station that we know we can achieve by Pan Am Games, and ensure that when you come into the station, it's a fully complete, not a construction zone. If you looked at the schedule that Elena presented earlier, there's a definite gap in there for Pan Am, and this goes for any station that we are upgrading during Pan Am, that it needs to be complete. And to your point.
So we're going to have to come up with a sort of interim base design for the plaza area to make sure it's clean and safe and gets people where they need to go before we do the full construction.
Yes.
Assuming that there's increased service on the line, and given the effects of diesel on people's health, are you looking at electric trains, or?
So the question is whether Metrolinx is looking at electrifying the line to mitigate the harm caused by diesel engines.
So we are looking in the long term to electrify our lines, and we're going to be starting an area, I believe, on Lakeshore electrification actually quite soon. So it is a long term.
What do you mean by long term?
That I'm not sure.
Yes.
The walkway, which parallels the James Street Bridge, is it at street level or below street level?
So the walkway parallel to James, that runs over James?
There's the McNabb walkway.
Oh, the McNabb walkway. Is it at street level?
Yes.
Will it be lit up all 24 hours a day?
That's a good question. What is that?
Because it'll be pretty visible.
We're still trying to work out what we're trying to design it so that we can keep as much open as possible. When the trains aren't running, but we haven't fully determined that.
Sorry, you're trying to keep it open?
We're trying to design the interior so that we can keep the walkway open as much as possible without, we can lock up the ticket booth, we can lock up other aspects. But we haven't really determined how the hours that it'll be open or not. But of course, it's not replacing anything on the McNabb Street Bridge, it's next to it. So there still will be the McNabb Bridge.
So you're still answering my question, it only leads to the station. When the trains aren't running, it'll be closed.
We haven't determined that.
Why would it open?
We try to keep as much of our infrastructure open during non-revenue hours. A lot of people use the access routes through our stations to get over the rail corridor safely. In this situation, it's a little different. It doesn't go over the whole rail corridor. So that's precisely why we're looking at what accesses would be open during non-revenue hours and what would be closed. So the McNabb Street Bridge, or our bridge does not replace the McNabb Street Bridge for pedestrian access. So McNabb can be open. Am I answering your question?
Well, it doesn't
Correct.
railway.
Which is why we're still...
Leads to, you know, from the plaza to the station, and so that's what we're not used for when the trains are running. And I'm concerned about what it looks like. You're coming home late at night, walking across the bridge, it's a beautiful night, and there's a brightly lit pedestrian corridor right next to you at midnight, you know, or whenever. I just think it's unaesthetic.
So you're concerned about something being brightly lit versus
Unaesthetic.
unsafe? Okay.
I'm not concerned about the safety.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think you should please write down those concerns in the feedback form.
Yes.
I think what a lot of people are concerned about is the speed of service to Toronto with this line, and currently the GO service that makes all the stops, 13 or 14 stops, if it were extended to Hamilton past Aldershot, you're still looking at over an hour and a half, whereas the current GO bus with good traffic takes 40 minutes. And I love trains. I'm excited about having trains in my neighborhood, but wouldn't GO be at this point, especially with the 30-minute service coming to Aldershot, wouldn't they be looking at making some of those trains express to Toronto or limited stop semi-express to cut down on the travel times?
So the question is whether some of the trains will be express or semi-express to cut down on travel from Toronto.
In an ideal world, yes. I'm not sure if it's possible because, again, CN owns a lot of the railway between Aldershot, I guess, Oakville, and Hamilton, and this is a major freight line for them, so we have to work with their schedule. As well, I'm not sure if we have the track expansion capability to run express trains. Again, we need to do our service planning. But the other thing I want to remind you is that although the kind of current patterns right now is everyone from the suburbs going into Toronto, with the 30-minute service on Lakeshore, we really want to lay out these mobility hubs. We want people to come to Hamilton and work in Hamilton. We want people in Hamilton to be able to go to Burlington and work, or go to Oakville and work. So I think that's part of the mindset that we're trying to change and really build up these mobility hubs so they're places you can live and work.
In any other city the size of Hamilton, being 60 kilometers away from the provincial capital, I mean, you just look at anywhere else in the world where you have a city the size of Hamilton, 60 kilometers away from a city the size of Toronto, you would not be looking at an hour and a half trains.
Concerned that the lighting doesn't make it look like a Walmart parking lot between the parking and the pedestrian areas, the bridge, etc. And that the light is directed down and not in your eyes and not in the sky. That's just a comment. And my other question is, are you adding any track, or are you just using existing track for this service?
We are adding track essentially from the Desjardins Canal down towards James Street. Obviously, the two tracks in the station right now, or as shown in the plans, are new tracks. Whether they extend all the way to the Desjardins, that's still being designed at this point.
Yes, question at the far back then.
Wondering how many platforms are you going to provide for the GO bus?
So how many platforms for the GO bus?
So there are 4 bus bays in the design right now. I think 2 of them are for GO, as we see it right now. Coach, so the question was Coach Canada or Greyhound? Not in the plan, I think.
Thank you. Yes, over there as well.
Does that include the Express GO direct into Union? Will that be stopping there?
The bus or the train? So the question is whether the express bus to Union Station will be stopping here.
Again, we haven't determined that yet. We haven't done our service planning.
Yes.
Yeah, just wondering if you have a plan in place to involve the local arts community, because it would seem that the 2015 deadline would be a really good opportunity to actually showcase some Hamilton artists.
So the question is whether Hamilton artists will be part of showcasing their work with us.
So I spoke to a little bit about that before. We have started discussions with the City of Hamilton about trying to incorporate some local artists into the plaza design. Beyond that, we haven't had any other discussions. We're certainly open to ideas, but again, the plaza might not be constructed by 2015. However, if there's local artists that wanted to approach us, and if we have space that they wanted to temporarily use, I'm sure there's plenty of opportunities, and we're open to discussions about that, because it is a great location in terms of the art hall and Duke Street.
Yes.
I'm just kind of wondering what will happen after Penn. So if there's a big push for that, and that's why we're supplementing the Winter Street station, what happens after Penn, and then the service will, I'm assuming, dropping it, and why will we need this?
So the question is, what will happen to the service after the Penn units are open?
So again, we haven't determined exactly, but the long-term plan is to have service to Niagara and to have two-way all-day service to Hamilton. So ultimately, that's the goal that we're striving for.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm excited about the coming down here, but this hour and a half time, that's news to me. I wasn't familiar with that. Is that accurate? And how is that an advantage over the buses?
Sorry, I didn't get your second question.
How is that an advantage over the buses?
Okay, so what will be the actual travel time, and how is that an advantage over the bus?
So the actual travel time, again, is a service plan in your shoe. I can tell you, because I take the train from Aldershot, that the Aldershot train is about an hour to Union. So that's what we call a milk run, every stop, all the way down. There are a lot of express trains in rush hour that go to Union Station, which are about 50 minutes. I think the bus from downtown Hamilton can be 40, the schedule says an hour, so there's traffic time in there. What's the advantage?
It can also be an hour and 20 minutes.
Yes, it can also be an hour and 20 minutes
Yeah.
plus, depending on traffic. The advantage of taking a train is traffic. We can get downtown in a guaranteed time.
Yes.
The point out that VIA runs from Aldershot, just a stop at Oakville, and they do it in about 35 or 40 minutes. So it's possible to get those trains down the track.
Yeah, once you tell me.
Yes.
Question and comment. I'm curious about the bicycle parking. Will it be just a ring and post, or will it be more secure, sort of cage parking like there is at the City Hall and other places? And the other comment is, if you take the train, you're pretty much guaranteed to get to Toronto at a given time. 40 minutes on a bus, that happens at 8 o'clock on a Sunday morning. I've never taken a bus during the week and gotten to Toronto anything under an hour and a half. And there's so many variables between Hamilton and Toronto in terms of traffic accidents, pileups. You're almost, unless it's dead of winter and there's ice on the tracks, you're pretty much guaranteed to get to Toronto at the time it says that you're going to get to Toronto. So that's the advantage of taking the train.
So the comment was that I think the train you have a guaranteed time to get where you're going. But the question that came before that was whether there'll be bicycle parking just ring and post or more of a secure cage like at City Hall.
So right now, we're planning for our standard GO shelter. So it's I don't know what you call that, but basically it's the triangle, hanging triangle is our standard hanging circle, and then a covered bike parking. But we do have a pilot program with a couple of secure bike lockers. So if you feel strongly about that, please put that in your feedback. It's not, this is a good time to hear about that.
Yes.
If there's going to be two bus bays reserved for GO buses, and these are not GO buses going to Toronto, then what are they and where are they going?
So the question is, what will the GO bus be for if they're not going to Toronto?
Well, Well, we didn't say they're not for Toronto. We haven't just, basically we're building in because we know that somehow there's going to be probably some bill buses there. They might be train meets, they might be in place of trains, but we haven't done the service plan.
Yes?
I've looked at all the designs, or not designs, but sort of ideas on the Metrolinx website, and of course you're going to be right across the street from one of our most beautiful buildings and historical buildings. I know that you can't create a little LIUNA Station, although I wouldn't mind if you did, but when I've looked at what's on the design, unless I've missed something, I'm not seeing any effort to acknowledge or harmonize or echo. I mean, I know that you can't create something that looks like this, but there are ways, even with modern architecture, to try to blend, echo, harmonize, and what efforts are being made to do that?
The question is, what efforts are being made to blend or harmonize the architecture of the new station with, for example, the building we're in right now across the street?
I'm just going to say what I said earlier. I mean, oh, no, that's okay. So someone had pretty much the exact same comment. So we had a lot of these comments at the last stakeholder meeting. So some of the direction we're giving our consultants is to look at, the materials of the LIUNA Station as one thing. And the kind of heritage of steel and stone and things like that, because I think that is a great way to tie into the local characters. That's one of my
Thanks. I just wanted to let everyone know that we've got about 2 minutes left. So we have time certainly for a few more questions, but I just wanted to remind you before you go, please do take one of the forms that are on the table at the far side and fill it out and submit it. And that's a great way to get your suggestions into Metrolinx. So we'll take some more questions. Yes.
I know about saying key stakeholders, but I don't know who they are. My other little issue is I see skateboards there.
Yeah.
They're not there, but I see them. So I don't know what you're going to do, because in Toronto I've experienced anywhere there's something like that, you've got skateboards, right? So anyway, skateboards, and who are the key stakeholders?
So the question is, who are the key stakeholders, and what are we going to do about skateboarders?
Well, I guess, first of all, is there a problem for skateboarders? I mean, that's
when they run up your ankles, there is, and they run into you.
Okay, well, if you have a concern about skateboarders, I would suggest you put that in your feedback. I mean, our concern would be about materials and vandalism, but I'm not fundamentally against stakeholders in principle. But in terms of, and of course this design is completely changing, but you're right, any kind of plaza with railings of any kind is going to attract skateboarders. In terms of key stakeholders, so at the last meeting we invited representatives from all of these community groups and more. The mayor was there. We invited local politicians, as well as I believe there's someone from Andrew Horvath's office. Is anyone else? Oh, we invited local art, community art representatives. Is there anyone else?
I just wanted to mention there's an excellent skate park in Beasley, not far from here. Yes.
Will the station and the trains be Wi-Fi enabled?
The question is, will the station and the trains be Wi-Fi enabled?
I think we're definitely looking right now at putting Wi-Fi in our stations. I'm not sure about the trains. I think from what I've heard that it's much more difficult to do the trains. Did you hear me, sir?
Yes.
Yeah. But I understand that we're looking at doing our stations.
It's a pilot program.
It's a pilot program, okay.
Yes. So the question is, will the service be the same once the Pan Am Games are over?
So, like we said, we're going to provide specific service for the Pan Am Games, whatever the events are. Afterwards, we haven't determined what that service will be, but in the long term, we are aiming for two-way all-day service.
Yes.
Just double checking. There seems to be a lot of questioning about the service plan, and I know that your layout was your major factor to get through. Will there be developments or updates that we can periodically check in once you guys get that ball rolling, that we can check in and see what your guys' plans are, since there's been so much concern about it?
So the question is, will there be regular updates on the status of the project?
Yeah, basically any regular update would go on our Go Transit website under Niagara EA, Joanna. The Go Transit website, this information is under Niagara.
Yeah, so this presentation is actually posted on our website, and I'll forward the link to your community association so you can access it and look at it again in more detail.
So we're going to forward you the link, but it's on the Go Transit page under Niagara, environmental assessment. And of course we are talking about coming back to the community in the fall to report back on this. I don't know if the service planning will be done by then.
Yes, the back.
Can you confirm how long you funded till 2017? Or are we going to see a cut-off point?
Sorry, I didn't catch the first part of that.
Can you confirm you're funded to 2017?
Okay, the question is whether they confirmed the funding for completion in 2017.
Yes, this project is fully funded.
So there's no danger of a half project?
No, it's not. It's not dependent on some kind of stimulus package or anything like that.
Yes, at the back.
I'm going to stand up because I don't have a microphone. I'm at the back. My office is right next to the GO station on Hunter Street. And it works exceptionally well for the urban population that's not in a vehicle. It's about a maximum of 5 minutes from here to there, from this place to that place by bus. And we've not been able to see that there's any demand for a second station to handle that urban demand of people in the lower city who will come by bus and bike and foot and want to get on a GO station. So quite frankly, this doesn't make any sense when you watch that station working very well. It's right integrated with the street pattern, it's integrated with the bus pattern. The only conclusion that some of our urbanites have come to is that this station is being built to take growth pressure off Aldershot so that you don't have to build garages and so on in Aldershot, and that it's really designed to handle the suburban demand for GO Transit for people who will come into the lower city in cars. That's a long preamble to a question. Have you done, or is there a study that we can see that shows what the need is for this station and where that need is generated and how those potential passengers will get here and in what volume? And that becomes of interest to people who are in the North End because, as you know, we're extraordinarily sensitive to the issue of vehicles going through the residential streets, which was what produced the North End traffic plan. So my question again, is there a study that shows why this is being built in terms of which passengers you're attempting to look for and how those passengers are going to get here and in what numbers?
So in answer to your question, is there a study that exists? Yes, it's the Niagara service expansion for the EA, which was approved. So a lot of those details you're asking about passenger volumes and people using the station is in the approved EA. When we're speaking about parking strategy, the numbers that are generated from our parking strategy and the planning, again, 200 to 300 spaces for James Street was a study based on who will be using this station and where they'll be coming from. And that is...
The city has it. We can look into it. Sure.
Yeah, the city has it, and we can look into making that available.
We can deal with that at the end of the meeting. Thank you.
Okay, we have time for a couple more questions. Yes?
This question is related to the design of the station. It's about McNabb Street and Park Street, which will be feeding into the station. Currently, those streets are one-way streets. McNabb Street is one-way north. Park Street is one-way south. However, the city is in the process of converting those streets to two-way streets. So my question is, does that affect the design of the GO station? Is Metrolinx aware of those two-way conversion plans? And would there be a stake in whether or not those are one-way or two-way streets?
Yeah, even though we might seem somewhat ignorant, our consultants are at the IBI group, and they worked on the Northern Traffic Management Plan. And so we've been working very closely with the city, or they've been working very closely with the city. And the city is quite amenable to working with us to make sure, you know, what's going two-way, what's going to stay in one way works with the traffic circulation. So it's a collaborative process.
Here we have time for one last question. Yes?
I'm going to go with shopping. Is there going to be any room for like United Cigar Stores and Tim Hortons and stuff like that in there? Up in the plaza area or just down at the bottom of the station?
So we are reserving a space in the station building for a small retail outlet. We're also looking for the plaza area. We're thinking about potentially putting in a spot for food trucks, things like that. And again, you know, that's why we're trying to get as much feedback on what you'd like to see in the plaza as much as possible, because you know, we can build the infrastructure that, you know, for temporary pop-ups, things like that. We definitely want to be as economic as possible.
Okay, thank you all very much. All right, one last one.
First of all, long-term property owner, very proud, very happy to be finding the station down here. Long-term overdue. And second, who is the architect that's actually, has that been assigned to a specific firm?
It's actually the IBI group is a multi-disciplinary group, and they are designing the station.
Okay, thank you to Alana and Randall and your colleagues for being here and answering questions. And thank you to everyone for coming out tonight. This was an amazing group and a lot of people, and it was a lousy night. So thank you all very much. And thanks to the neighborhood associations, BHP Central and North